Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And today I am really excited to be speaking to another divorce coach because I always think that divorce coaches have great conversations together. So I want to introduce you to Karen McNenny. She is a mediator and a divorce coach. She has been trained as a therapist, and she is dedicating to helping families transform themselves by going through a good divorce experience so they can have a great co-parenting relationship. And I think this is so important. Karen is a TEDx speaker, and she also has her own podcast, the Good Divorce Show podcast. So I'm really excited because we have almost a mirror image of each other, what we do. So this is
thank you, Marty. I always say, call a coach before you call a lawyer, please.
Yes. Call a coach and call a mediator before you call the attorney. I think that's
right.
And before we get into that good stuff, because I know we've got lots to talk about around that, but Karen, how did your path get to here, to where you are, and the support you provide families? Because most of us, when we were kids, did not think, when I grow up, I'd like to be a divorce coach. That just doesn't happen.
That goes right along with when I got married. I didn't plan on getting divorced.
Exactly.
And so I have a yes to both of those, Marty. And I've been a business consultant for 25 years. And while that work was quiet during the pandemic, I turned back to this topic that I've been so passionate about since my own divorce in 2021. I'm sorry, that's not right. Let's see, it's 2025 now. So gosh, yeah, it's been 14 years. Since our divorce. And honestly, when my husband and I were facing down the pathway, I was so afraid of divorce. I would rather stay in a bad marriage than go through a terrible divorce. And it seemed like there was a multiple choice question about how you would like to divorce. And there was only one answer on the multiple choice, which is lawyer up, become enemies, go into debt, be very destructive, and be sure you damage your children on the way out the door.
Yeah.
And I just thought there must be another way. So Michael and I, we, kind of felt our way through a process, learned a lot of things along the way. I found myself often talking about divorce, other people coming to me like, gosh, you guys are doing so well. What's your secret sauce? And that is when I became a certified divorce coach, a co-parenting specialist. I started the podcast so that we could highlight what a good divorce looks like. And just like you, Marty, in May of 2026, my book will be coming out, the memoir of my divorce, as well as the things that I've learned working with families along the way. So I built the business I was looking for 15 years ago.
I cannot tell you, Karen, how many people I talk to that work in the divorce industry that use that exact term. I became the professional I wish I had had, and it didn't exist. So when I got my divorce, oh my gosh, it was like 1999, I think. So it's been a long time. There wasn't anybody. You went to a lawyer, and that was it. And especially if you didn't have kids, I mean, you just went to and I didn't. So you just went to the attorney. And even though I was trained as a mediator, or because I was trained as a mediator, my husband at the time did not want to go through the process because he thought it wouldn't be fair because I was trained as a mediator. So, people get these ideas in their head about what divorce looks like. But anyhow, so you are also, you've also done a lot of work on creating a program, right? That's called, is your program called the Good Divorce Experience? Is that what you call it?
The Good Divorce Experience. And it's actually the process I lead families through. And I think what is distinct and unique about it is, my ideal client are parents who on a Sunday decide, we've tried everything. We've gone 10 ways to Texas and back again. We've done the therapy counseling. We did the retreats. And I believe let's fight for our marriages. But when the exit ramp just keep showing up, then let's have an elegant exit.
Right.
And they call me on a Monday morning and say, Karen, we've decided to get divorced. Now what? Which usually starts with, we need to tell our kids. What do we say to our kids?
Right.
And I usually say, tap the brakes just a little bit, because there's a few things we need to figure out before you go sit down with your children. Namely, where is everyone going to live? So I scoop that couple up right at the beginning. And we move through a communications plan, which isn't just with the children, it's also their teachers and coaches and counselors. It's with our immediate family and friends, so that we're setting the tone of how they're going to design their divorce from the get-go. Because sometimes we have these shadow figures, well-intended friends and parents are like, oh, you better lawyer up, you're going to get screwed. We're, other people doing damage.
Yeah.
So then we move through our real estate process. We go through co-parent education. We write the parenting plan. Then we start talking about finances. I really believe in family before finances. And when it comes to housing and whatnot, of course, we can do more than one thing at once. But the idea is that we have a wraparound experience. And then we might engage a real estate agent. We might engage with a certified divorce financial analyst. We'll certainly need an attorney in your home state to do the documentation. And I don't know about you, Marty, but I am meeting more and more attorneys. One who will say, I'm not litigating anymore. Family court, no place for a family. 2, I'm only doing mediation. 3, I love working with coaches because I don't have to do any of the touchy-feely, emotional, hard stuff. I just help educate and interpret the law and document the decisions that that family has made, so that when you pop out the other side of your divorce, you have a foundation that is protecting your future. And I remind those couples, your marriage might be ending. Well, your marriage is ending, right? But not your relationship. If you share children, you have a forever relationship in some degree. And from graduation to grandbabies, let's create an environment and a family experience where your children are not having to navigate their parents who still are holding on to old hurts and pain from years ago. So early intervention and prevention.
That is so powerful. And, there is this, I work, so I do slightly different with my divorce coaching, because I tend to work more with the high conflict individuals. So just because a lot of times I get referrals from attorneys who say this client is so emotional and they're so angry and they're so overwhelmed with feelings of revenge, and that the family court system is there to punish somebody, that they're not making good decisions. So I work with kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. But I still work with my clients on, you can change this, this dynamic. You can have at least a decent co-parenting relationship. Probably never going to be going on vacations together, or maybe you won't even be doing kids' birthday parties together, but you can be civil. You can do nice text messages back and forth. You can get on because you're right. What about graduation? What about weddings? What about funerals? What about life, any kind of life-changing event? Do you want your kids to make a decision which one of you is going to get invited to that event? Because 2 of you together is a nightmare.
It's just, there's another way to go. And I strongly believe divorce is not a weapon. It's a tool. And it exists to improve the function of the family and the relationship between the co-parents. If you want it to get worse, stay in your bad marriage. It'll probably get worse. If you want it to get really bad, stay too long, cause a lot of damage to the relationship, and then call a lawyer who will do more damage.
Right.
Whereas again, if we could give more permission and more opportunity for that elegant exit, then I think couples would leave before the destruction starts. And they can find their way to what is a grief and a heartbreak, but that on the other end, we may not be friends, but let's be friendly. And at the very least, the family continues. And that's the language we use. We are one family that lives across 2 homes.
Right. That's a beautiful message. And there's no such thing as a broken family. There's
stop saying those things.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Marty, I've been living this. I was joking with a friend the other day. We just graduated our youngest child at the time of this recording in the spring of 2025. So both of our kids are now 18 and on the other side of high school. So we're done with parenting plan. We're done with all the kind of legal boundaries that have existed. And meanwhile, our children are breaking up with us, right?
Right.
These
Sure.
18 and 20-year-olds, they're gnashing of teeth. They're frustrated and irritated. They want to get out of the house. They want their autonomy. And I'm like, oh, it's another form of breakup. But they're not leaving the family. They're going to come back around and we're going to redefine our adult relationship, which will have more independence and autonomy. They will become more financially standing on their 2 feet. So we know how to do this. We do it every time we emancipate and launch our young adult children, which sometimes does have gnashing of teeth, but the family and that relationship stays intact in some way and gets reconstructed.
Right.
And that's what I'm helping parents do is we're going to reconstruct your relationship so that you can delight in the journey of raising your children together and then witnessing their adult life together.
Yeah, what a beautiful goal to have.
Yes.
Karen, what you just got me thinking here as I hear you talking. Why do you think, or why do you know, maybe you know the answer to this, that divorce is so emotionally fraught? Like, why is anger the default mode that everybody, even I think even well-adjusted couples who are amicable and recognize that the divorce is going to be good for both of them and who have those goals that you're talking about to continue to be good co-parents, they still go through periods where they are absolutely pissed off at the other person, and that anger and that resentment and maybe even betrayal and all that stuff just comes boiling to the surface. That why do you think that
Well,
negative stuff?
I wish I knew that answer, but I am happy to riff on some thoughts with you, Marty. And
Yeah.
just this morning, I was in conversation with the editor of my book, and we were trying to unwind this exact thing. Where does all this anger come from? So I'm going to evoke Krista Tippett, who is a wonderful journalist and the host of On Being podcast. And she says, anger is what pain looks like when it shows up in public. Anger is what pain looks like when it shows up in public. So let's go to the pain part. And particularly for those of us with kids, if my husband had died, people would know how to support me and there would be great sadness. But he didn't die. My marriage died. Our family as we knew it died. My identity as a wife and partner died. My full-time parenting assignment died. And I was grieving the loss of 50% of those bedtimes and morning snuggles that would no longer happen. So there is so much grief happening. I don't think as a society we recognize that. I think we underestimate the pain of it. Our laws around the Family Medical Leave Act is one indicator of how we don't support people going through divorce. As a business consultant, I see how employees operate when they're in the midst of divorce. It's no different than I'm caring for an elderly parent. I've just said goodbye to a parent. It is fraught with huge emotions. So if we could give some support. I also think that there is a little bit of I don't know if it's self-loathing or we're discouraged and disappointed in all the things that we maybe said yes to in that marriage when we wanted to say no. And this is our one chance to correct it all.
Right.
I had a spouse and they were saying, we moved for them. I said yes to that. They always get their way. I've always done it. And so now in divorce, it's a double down. And I'm like, I know that you probably didn't have the marriage you wanted and you are part of that. And so then we're acting out from that place. And the last one that comes to mind is in the word that you use, betrayal. I believe that the fantasy, the fairy tale, the forever after, what we continue to tell people marriage will be, should be, and every fairy tale story ends at the time of marriage.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we never see the marriage, right? We see the wedding and Prince Charming and Princess, bibbity bobbity boo, off they go. And then we never see what happens in the marriage. So I think there's also a betrayal of, again, nobody signs up for marriage expecting divorce. And it's so easy to get married, and it's
Right.
really legally complicated and emotionally complicated to unravel the relationship, and that rupture of the relationship is just so fraught with big emotions.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I think one that I hear with a lot of my clients, because a lot of the the people I work with are dealing with, I'm just going to call them toxic partners, whether you want to label them, narcissist or bipolar or whatever, grandiose, whatever you want to call them, but it's that they always bought into the dream of what the potential was for the relationship.
That's right.
And so that anger, I think, is that unmet expectation, but they set the expectation. So I think it's not only anger at the partner for not doing, changing, being however they wanted to fix them to be, but I think there's also a little bit of self anger about, I got myself into this.
Yes.
And but the blame is still, but they forced my hand, because they didn't live up to what I thought they should do. And so I never blame people that are in abusive relationships. I was a domestic violence client advocate for many years, and I absolutely never blame people for being in a bad relationship.
Yeah.
But as the person who gets into that relationship, you do have to look back at what choices led you to get into that relationship, because usually there are signs, right? It's not usually an out of the blue thing. But I do think this is all really important. And this is where a divorce coach can kind of help you go through all of this stuff
and to process it.
Yeah. And I love that you start with you have that communication bit in your process of helping couples through this, because a lot of times communication problems are at the core of most relationship breakups, I think.
Yeah, it certainly adds to it. And as I heard you speaking, the words of Maya Angelou come to mind, something along the lines of, people will always show you exactly who they are. Your job is to believe them.
Right.
And it's just easier to blame the person who still doesn't do this, do that, right? All the disappointments and the contempt that can come up in marriage, where they're just being the person they've always been. And so again, that kind of self-loathing of, I signed up for this. And I'll remind you, listeners, your former spouse, the person you were married to, is the same person you're going to be divorced from. And somehow we think there's going to be a little light switch that, well, now that we're divorced, they'll fill in the blanks, follow through on email. They'll remember when the kids thing is happening. They'll have thoughtful conversations. They'll check in with, right? No, same person. Yeah. And my hope is that we all move on and kind of find our better match. I think compatibility is often at the core of marital strife. And again, we don't do enough up front in our learning and our education system. We've got people trapped in school for 12 years. We should teach them a little bit more. I always say there's reading, writing, arithmetic. Can we get relationship on the list?
Right. Yes.
And really equip our young people as they go into the workplace, right? That's where I've been living for 25 years, working as a human behavior and relationship expert, because it's the people part of the workplace that causes disruption. And then it's the people part of our private lives. And, my kids know how to do long division. Do they know how to have a difficult conversation with another human?
Right. They don't. And it's interesting because I do a lot of, as a mediator, I get called in to do a lot of conflict resolution training and, how to strategically plan for negotiations in the workplace and all that kind of stuff. And it's no different than the conversations you're going to have with your loved ones. And if anything, it's easier to do these high conflict conversations in the workplace because a lot of times you don't have an emotional attachment like you do to your loved ones. So wherever you learn it, it's going to help you, all around your life.
All around. People is people.
Yeah. I just love this. Yeah. Karen, what do you, what is the one thing, if you were going to talk to parents because let's focus on that. What's the one thing you could say that is a clear indicator that the relationship is not sustainable if they have children? Is there any particular thing that kind of comes to the top of your mind?
Well,
Talked about the damage it can cause kids.
As you know, every relationship is unique. And if you're in the marriage, I'll share my moment. That was one of the first dominoes. And again, like you said, it's never one thing. It's this complex tapestry that's all sewn together. And then when you pull on one thread, it's going to tug on another thread, and that's connected to another one. And many of us with children repeat this mantra: stay for the kids, stay for the kids. I'm going to stay for the kids. And I was there, like, it's going to be better for our kids. I'm just going to stay here. And then, there's arguments and conflict. And we know, and research will show us, that it is worse for children, their nervous system and their long-term mental health, to live inside a high conflict household than to be in a home with one parent that has more peace. And I remember one of those days, and Michael wasn't even on the scene. It was just me and the kids. And I lost my squash, as we say in my household. I was just so full of anger and hurt and pain, right? Like we were saying, all those emotions. I felt like a ping pong ball in a shoebox, just bouncing around, and you never know. And then it came out, and I was just and my kids were little, 5 and 7, and I saw their eyes, and they were afraid of their mama. And it was just big voice and big energy. But I caught my breath, and immediately it changed. I need to leave for my children. And I do believe the disillusion of our marriage saved our family. We have a beautiful family. We're so proud of our kids. We've sat side by side for every important event. We were there just 48 hours ago celebrating with my parents, extended family, this graduation, taking the family photos all together, everyone laughing and smiling. Now, husband and I aren't going to go out and go bowling and have a beer this Friday. What matters is that we show up for our kids, and we can compartmentalize that. So if you're in a marriage, and for me, I felt like I am no longer the best version of myself in this marriage, or the high conflict is negatively affecting, or the third one is it's the apathetic remote relationship where now my parents are roommates in the same house, which is what I grew up in. And I have parents who are now in their 80s, 60 plus years, still married. And as a teenager, I can remember my scrappy self saying, you guys don't even like each other. I don't even know why you're still married. And they went from high conflict to apathetic.
Right.
And that's probably why I became a mediator, because I've sat between my two married parents who act more like they're divorced, and trying to mediate them in decisions and whatnot. So it's unique for each one of you. But what I will say is I think we often know our truth long before we speak it. And even if you're talking about separation and divorce, that doesn't mean you're going to do it. What happens is we don't talk about it soon enough. We don't come to the table with curiosity and concern. It suddenly escalates because we think the only way to leave a marriage is if it's on fire.
Yes.
So we start setting fires unnecessarily.
Yeah.
We stay too long.
Yeah. I so agree with that. And I do think, that I just don't feel good. I know that this isn't where I want to be. I know this isn't how I want to spend my life. So I am going to start those fires. So then I can point and say, see, we're not getting along.
Yeah.
I really believe that happens. Not to everybody, but it does happen. It happens.
But affairs start to show up, addiction habits, pushing away, loss of intimacy. And again, whatever you go looking for, that's what you're going to find.
Right.
So we don't have to be on fire to exit our marriages. And I think, if anything, that's the biggest mistake we make is we stay too long.
Right. Karen, you have shared a ton of information, and I really like your really practical, down to earth description of this kind of stuff, because I do think it helps people. Sometimes, we tend to get up in the theory of what's going on in divorce and relationships and everything. It's nice to just bring it down to the real the real stuff that people are dealing with. So out of everything we've talked about and everything you've shared, what is the one takeaway you want people to keep at the top of their mind when they go on about their busy day today?
I want you all to remember that divorce casts a very long shadow throughout your entire life. And as you're making decisions, to give yourself the question, will this matter in 5 days? Is it going to matter in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? And try to look at the long story. Even with your children, right? We're active in this divorce for 18, 20 years, but you got another good 40 years to be in relationship with your kids. So I remind you, listeners, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's just not the end.
Yeah, wonderful. That is such a positive message to leave this on, because you're right. I always, like you, I encourage people to think long term. Don't think immediate and what's right here visceral today. Right. Karen, if people want to find out more about what you do, learn about your program that you work with couples to get through to have this gracious and positive divorce experience, what's the best way to do that?
The easiest thing is to Google the Good Divorce Coach or Karen McNenny, but the Good Divorce Coach will get you to my website. I do work with couples. I work with individuals with and without children. I'm going to start offering some group opportunities for learning and education and support because my caseload gets full. And by all means, hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and find the Good Divorce Show, where I not only have experts, but I also have families. I have adult children of divorce. I have couples and individuals come on and tell their personal stories of how they did it well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that is actually that's on my list of podcasts I listen to regularly. So I've heard some of those episodes with the families, and it's so inspiring. So thank you for doing that. And I want to thank everybody for listening in, and don't forget to tune in again next week for the next episode of The D Shift. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.